Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So today we are from Group 4. We would like to present about our research proposal, which is the factors that influence inflation rate in Malaysia. So first, let me introduce our team members. The first one is Atira binti Salminto, the second one is Nur alias Suraya binti Mak Zaid, and lastly Nur Adibah Husna binti Alias.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Nur Ada Suraya binti Mazai. So I will start with chapter 1, background study. This study analysis of Malaysia's inflation rate fits within the larger economic conversation about inflation, which is defined as a gradual rise in the average price of goods and services. This research is significant for several reasons by providing a comprehensive overview of Malaysia's economic history, the importance of inflation, and the rationale for focusing on specific factors influencing inflation in the country. The research question identifies the overarching issue that needs investigation, while the objective outlines the specific steps and goals needed to address that question. The research question for this study is intended to provide further evidence of the variables that impact Malaysia's inflation rate, while the research objective to look at the macroeconomic factors of Malaysia's inflation rate. For the problem statement, the researcher addresses the core issue that the researcher aims to investigate, which is inflation. A country's currency loses purchasing power when there is a persistent increase in the average price of goods and services over time in its economy is known as inflation. Many researchers had argued in the past that inflation rates are closely related to the affordability of living in Malaysia. Therefore, the government plays a vital role in ensuring the inflation rate in Malaysia can be controlled. As a result, more research is needed to determine what are the main factors that influence the inflation rate in Malaysia. The scope of study will focus on economic factors that influence Malaysia's inflation rate, such as economic growth, exchange rate, and unemployment rate. And the data collection period will last 20 years from 2000 to 2020.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Nur Adibah Husna binti Alias. So today I'm going to proceed with chapter 2, which is theoretical findings and empirical findings. Okay, for the theoretical findings, which is we identified two theory, which is Keynesian and then Okun's law. Okay, Keynesian economics emphasize government intervention through monetary and fiscal policy to achieve price stability and full employment. It centers on the significance of aggregate demands, representing total spending by individual, corporation, and the government. Advocates of Keynesian theory highlights monetary and fiscal activism as essential tools for stabilizing the economy. The second is proven theoretical research, including Okun's law, affirms an inverse relationship between GDP and the unemployment rates. Okun's law suggests 2 to 3% rise in GDP growth for every 1% decrease in the unemployment rates. Empirical studies underscore the negative impact of unemployment on GDP, emphasizing the crucial need for economic analysis and policymakers to comprehend this interaction. The next is empirical findings. The first is inflation rates. Malaysia inflation rate is on the rise, sparkling debates on the key influencer. This study explores how economic factors, GDP, exchange rates, and unemployment affect inflation. A rising GDP may drive inflation, while the exchange rates, especially the Malaysian ringgit against the US dollar, influences the investment and import costs. The second is unemployment rates. An empirical study provides significant insight into the intricate interactions between unemployment rates, inflation, and other important economic factors in the Malaysian environment. The careful research conducted by the author highlights the significant impact on GDP growth, labor first participation rates (LF), and foreign direct investment (FDI) have on the dynamic of Malaysia's unemployment rates. The next is exchange rates, a comprehensive study which encompasses factors such as unemployment, government spending, and economic growth, underscore the multifaceted nature of the forces driving inflation within the Malaysian context. The recognition of the exchange rates as a significant factor in the conjunction in this variable further solidifies its importance in shaping the economic landscape. The last one is economic growth. The combined result of these investigations have important ramifications for both academic and policymakers. Taking a comprehensive approach leads to a deeper understanding of the factor impacting inflation, which facilitates the making for more intelligent and nuanced economic policy decisions. The recognition of nonlinear interactions forces conventional viewpoints of re-examine, highlighting the necessity and adaptable and flexibility policy frameworks that takes into account the complex dynamic at work within Malaysia's changing economic environment.
So now, let me present about the chapter 3, which is about the research methodology. So, this is the methodology, which is the first one is quantitative method, and the second one is purpose and strategy. So for the quantitative method, quantitative research is a systematic methodological approach that entails the collecting and analysis of a numerical data to address research issues and test hypotheses. Is the methodology that has been chosen for this study. Experimental design such as randomized control trials or non-experimental methods such as surveys and observational studies are frequently used in this kind of study. Next is the purpose and the strategy of the methodology. The methodology of research for this study is focused on the application of the quantitative method in which is adapted of the numerical data to provide the accurate measurement in the results and findings of the study. Based on the hypothesis, the deductive reasoning approach was applied, in which the logical form of thinking from the previous study was used to test against the current outcome of the study to understand the similarity or the differences in drawing the results and conclusion of the study. So now let's go with the time series analysis. We have 3 time of series analysis. The first one is the variance inflation factor. So this is the formula, which is VIF equal 1 divide 1 minus R2. So this is the result for the inflation factor. The first one is VIF. If equal with 1 is not correlated. If the VIF is less than or equal to 5 is moderately corrected, and the last one is VIF. If it is greater or equal to, it will highly correlated. Next, we have the serial correlation test. This is the formula for the serial correlation test. So this is the result. If 2, it's no autocorrelation, and if 0 to less than 2, it will be the positive autocorrelation. And lastly, if it's more than 2 to 4, it will become a negative correlation. And then lastly, we have normality test on residuals. It must form a bell-shaped curve that symbolizes a normal distribution. So now let's go with the type of analysis. A statistical technique used in regression analysis to estimate a linear regression model parameters is called ordinary least square, which is OLS. It will create a linear relationship between the dependent variable and one or more independent variables, that is the technique that involves. The coefficients that characterize this relationship are then found using the OLS, it will try to minimize the sum of square differences between observed and predicted values. It also emphasized by the term ordinary that this reduction is carried out in the conventional Euclidean sense. It also relative to parameter estimation. Residual analysis evaluates the fit and verifies assumptions about the normality and many more.
For Chapter 4, I will start with multiple regression analysis utilizing ordinary least squares (OLS). OLS is used to study and analyze the complex interaction that exists between a dependent variable and two or more independent variables. To reduce the sum of squared discrepancies between the dependent variables' actual and predicted values, the researcher employed the OLS approach. The steps in the procedure are defining the regression model, gathering information for the selected variables, utilizing OLS to estimate coefficient and evaluating the model's effectiveness. Next is Jacob-Berra test is used to determine whether a sample is normal. It looks at whether the sample data's kurtosis and skewness fit a normal distribution. The test null hypothesis is that the distribution of the data is normal. The test statistic is compared to up to degree of freedom chi-square distribution, which is based on the sample skewness and kurtosis. The sample's normality probability value, p-value of 0.023672. The null hypothesis for this test assert that the sample is taken from a population that has a normal distribution. Statistical evidence exists to reject the null hypothesis with a p-value of 0.023672 below the traditional significance level of 0.05. This suggests that at the selected significance level, the observed data do not fit into a normal distribution.
So next, I'm going to proceed with Chapter 5, which is conclusion of the research. The purpose of this study was to examine the relationship between inflation and unemployment, inflation and exchange rates, and inflation and economic growth. Due to time constraint and data availability, only 20 years were chosen to achieve the study's goal. Several independent variables had data gaps in specific era, even with a longer time range. As a result, the observation periods for the study was 21 years. The dependent variable in the study was the inflation rates, and while the independent variable were unemployment, exchange rates, and economic growth. So next, we're going to proceed with implication of the study. Okay, under this implication, we have three significance, which is the first one is significance to government officials and policymakers. Government officials and policymakers have an essential part to play a role in controlling and regulating economic circumstances, including inflation. A study of the elements that influence inflation can give significant insights into the causes of the price increases in an economy. This knowledge contributes to the development of successful monetary and fiscal policy. The second is significant to central banks. Central banks use monetary policy to keep inflation within a specific range, which is especially important because prolonged inflationary pressure can harm economic development. Furthermore, central banks use economic forecasting to predict future of the economic situation. These forecasting models include an in-depth investigation of factors impacting inflation rates, which is allowing central banks to anticipate inflation patterns and adapt policy accordingly. Okay, the last but not least is significance to investor. Investor gain significantly from studies concentrating of the elements that influence the inflation rate. Informed by research, investors may make strategic asset allocation decisions that takes into the account the impact of inflation of various assets classes such as stocks, bonds, commodities, real estate, and others.
So now let's go with the limitations of study and the recommendation. For the limitations, this analysis can discover that there is more than one macroeconomic factors influencing Malaysia's inflation rate. Other factors such as government spending and taxation policies can alter total demand in the economy, influencing inflation and have an impact on supply, leading to rising growth in the near term. And lastly, for the recommendation, future researchers have suggested incorporating more independent variables such as exchange rates, interest rate, and real wages into their studies. By including additional independent variables, research outcomes can become more robust and accurate, offering a wealth of supplementary information for investigating the relationship between the variables. So I think that's all from us. Thank you.